Hello everybody, welcome back to the workshop. So in this video, we're going to talk about useful scrap for the beginner. So without further ado, let me take you down just to the ground here where I've got a bunch of useful scrap material that a beginner might find helpful, and we will get right to it. So let's do that now. Okay, so here we are. Let's go ahead and dig right in here to some of the useful scrap that you may or may not find lying around maybe your own property or somebody else's property that they may be willing to let you have. I live in an agricultural community, so access to stuff like this, if you live around an agricultural hub, is a lot easier to find than, say, if you live in somewhere like suburbia. But there's still things that you can find even there in suburbia, like you might not be too far away from a scrapyard or a junk dealer that you can be able to buy some things for and from. Anyways, so let's get right in here. So what it constitutes as useful scrap for a beginner? Well, obviously things like this that are super rusty and maybe like thin paint cans like this, unless you are a repurposer and you're using this in some sort of fabrication type welding project, this type stuff is going to be mostly no good to you. So you can go ahead and sort that out and get rid of that. Useful things to have are things like this. This is a bit of heavy walled tubing. This is an extruded over mandrel tubing. This is very handy to keep around, not only for making jigs, hook jigs, and all sorts of things like that out of. That can be very handy to you. You always want to spark test everything to see if there's a shower of sparks that come off with a lot of fire bursting sparks. That will indicate that it's high carbon steel versus long straight sparks, which indicates it's more of a low carbon content. So very useful. Again, having a bit of pipe on hand is very, very handy. Obviously, things like this can be cut again and made hooks out of, and you can make vases, and there's all sorts of forging things that you can do with that. So those are very handy. Some other scrap to stay away from is stuff that's already been purposed for something and is bent or misshapen and ruined out of, like this. This was just a test piece to take and punch holes under the power hammer on a die that I had made to go under the power hammer for punching some large holes like this. So this was just a test piece. As a beginner, you really just want to stray away from material like this, as it's just going to add a lot of labor time to you and not necessarily have that much benefit for your time that you have forging. The good old trusty railroad spike. Let's get into that for a second. And this could divulge all the way into a bit of a Roy rant on railroad spikes. You'll hear in blacksmithing comment sections and communities all around Facebook and social media, people are saying, yes, they're great. No, they're not. Man, I have unlimited free access to them because I steal them from the railroad. Or people who, which, by the way, guys, unless you're purchasing these brand new or you have a written contract or consent from the railroad still owns these. So again, and I got this from a landowner that had a piece of track on his land. So these are a little bit different. These weren't used in the railroad themselves. But again, and then I get guys who gift me these things too as well. Again, don't steal from the railroad. Don't go picking these things up along the tracks. It's illegal to do so here in the U.S., so please stop doing that. And I would say that for most intensive purposes, a railroad spike is a bad tool for a beginner to learn on because, one, it's a fairly hefty chunk of material. Two, there's several different grades of railroad spikes, so there's some that are tougher, some that are softer, some of them are even wrought iron, which those are really cool if you can get those, obtain those legally. That's where I would say it would be cool to take and get this type of thing from. But be very careful when taking and repurposing railroad spikes. They are not a great beginner thing to use. They force you to use tongs very, very early on, and it's not as handy, say, as if you have a length of steel about this size to work on. So again, they can be a fun project, but I would use them sparingly. I don't find them that helpful to beginners. They cause more questions and concerns than they solve. You can repurpose old axe heads. Again, here we're getting into the territory. You're going to need some specialized tongs for these. If you're okay with buying those, that's fine. You can chop this up if you want to, save the high carbon steel out of it, get all sorts of different things from it. Again, that's a great source of high carbon steel is old axe heads. You can find those at garage sale, just usually for a couple bucks. Lawnmower blades is another great source. Certain lawnmower blades, I should say, are a great source. Again, always take it and spark test your material. This can be a great source for high carbon steel as well. And one thing that doesn't get talked about as well or as often are these. These come from a rotary mower, if you will. It's like a flail mower, so it whips around. These are rotating on a shaft. You know, and these here and they almost look, you know, they really do look like a tiller in a way. And that's another one. You'll find something similar looking to this that are tiller tines for tillers. Those are all good high carbon steel. You can, you know, get a lot of material out of that for your different tooling endeavors and things that you have. Black iron pipe. That one's kind of a mixed bag of worms. A lot of the black iron pipe you find for scrap, unless it's good looking, like it's still black in nature. A lot of it's rusted to no end, and it may do a lot of collapsing on you. So it's not as good of a forging material. Definitely none of the fittings are worth anything. They're cast. So, you know, just the pipe itself could be handy if you're just making jigs and stuff. And then, you know, obviously square pipe, have some square tubing around. You can find that pretty readily in all sorts of ways. And then there's this here. This comes off of cultivators. This is a bit of high carbon steel off of a cultivator. And as you can see, it's already got some square holes in it and a round hole. So, you know, you could cut this loose hot. Like, go ahead and cut this loose with a saw and then straighten it while it's hot, and then you could use that as a pseudo kind of Hardy and Pritchell hole situation. Very handy little piece of tooling, and it's got a lot of thickness. These have a lot of thickness to them, so you can get a lot of tools, different tools or blades or whatever you're into, out of something like that. Again, that's just a brief look at different stuff. Again, stay away from stuff like this that's just junk. It's otherwise just junk. You definitely don't want to have to be buying that or purchasing that. One of the big things I'll say is be on the lookout for garage door coil springs. Now, this is like an industrial garage door coil spring, but they are very super handy to take and have. I mean, look how much punches and chisels and things like that you could get out of this piece here. Now, this is fairly small, but you know, you get automotive coil springs, things like that. They are great. They really are great for you know, doing different forging operations and stuff, to have these as drift pins to, again, chisels, small chisels. I make a lot of engraving and chasing chisels out of this roll, and I've been cutting on this thing for a while now, and I'm still not to the bottom of it. So I'll probably own this roll for the rest of my life right now at the rate I'm going. So anyways, that's just some real quick looks there. I hope you guys found that helpful. There's always some other honorable mentions I'll just throw in real quick. These are bolts. You'll find these too. These are like railroad bolts, railway bolts. They are high carbon steel. They are of a good grade of steel, much like, say, a 1075 or so. So they are very good steel. You can make things out of them. I've made a miniature anvil. And then you've also got these spring clips that you can get as well. You know, those are a much better option to make things out of, tomahawks and knives and whatnots, versus high HC railroad spikes. These will do you a lot better, and these are like 5160, so they're like a spring steel, so these are very good to use if you can. They are a booger to straighten out, so you got to have a lot of heat and have some time on your hands to go ahead and cut those out. One last one is find old hammerheads. That's a great source of really good high carbon steel in large chunks if you want to repurpose into a different size hammerhead. and different types of top tooling. But we went over that in previous videos. I'll link those up in the cards here at the end of this video. And that's going to be it for me today. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button. Let me know what you thought. And if you'd like to support more content like this in the future, consider checking out our website, blacksmithpdfs.com. That's it for today. God bless, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.